Hello, my name is Melanie and welcome to my channel, Our Tropical Soil. Right now it's June in Florida and we've been harvesting soursops for like about the last month. So I wanted to show you how we know when it's ready to harvest and how we eat them. So behind you right here is our soursop tree. It's pretty tall. I'd say it's at least like 5 years old, but it might be a little bit older. And it's probably about maybe 20 feet tall. So it grows kind of like a Christmas tree, where it has like a central stem that shoots up, and then it has like these side branches, and the main thing is the stem. The branches don't really grow too much off to the sides. So we know when they're ready because they get a lighter green. So the soursops have like little spikes on them, and then when it ripens, the spikes get more separated and they change color, like the skin changes color. Here's one right here. There's a couple in here. I think there's probably at least like 30 fruit on the tree. So here's one that I think is much less ripe than this one right here. So this one's like a darker green, and this one is a lighter green. So that's the first thing we use to determine if it's ready or not. We look at the color, and then when it's a lighter green, we go and we feel them, and we just feel them all over. And then once they have the slightest bit of give, then we know that they're ready to harvest. So we clip them off. We clip them off because here on this one you can see it better. Here you see how there's a stem. So it's connected from the stem, so we clip it off here with like gardening shears. And then we feel all over. So we have a ladder here, and we go and we touch the ones that have changed color like pretty much every day until they feel softer, and then we harvest them. Here's one that we harvested maybe like 2 days ago, and this one's ripe. It was in the fridge. You could see that it cracked. We've been getting a lot of rain for like the last week, and some of them have been cracking, but before they weren't cracking, so I'm guessing it's from the rain. Here you could see the back side, and you could see it's really soft. So we don't wait till it's this soft to harvest it. We just wait until it just feels the slightest bit soft, and it doesn't have to be all over. If just like the tip feels soft or the top or whatever, then we go ahead and harvest it. So you can see the skin is lighter, and the little spikes it has are like really separated apart. But it depends on the shape of the fruit, because here the spikes are separated apart, but on the other side they're much closer together. So it just depends. So I think the best way to tell if it's ready to harvest is by simply touching it, and that way it's tree ripened. This is like about one of the biggest ones we're gonna get. You see the skin is a lot darker green on this one, and the thorns are closer together. Not the thorns, they're like spikes. They don't really pinch you. They're just like little spiky things it has. I put a piece of wood here because it was rubbing against the leaves, and it seemed to be like rotting on the bottom. But this is a really nice looking one. This is like one of the best ones we're gonna get, I think. So if you've been enjoying the video so far, you can like it down below and subscribe to my channel to see more about growing food in Miami, Florida. So you can't wait until the soursop is really ripe, because this edge right here around the stem will just break off and the whole fruit will fall on the ground, and if it's really soft it'll just smush and basically just explode all over the place. So you want to get them just when they're a little bit soft and they'll ripen fine on the counter. And then once they're really soft all over, you could put them in the fridge. So after you harvest your soursop, you could leave it outside till it gets really soft, like this, like leave it on the kitchen counter. And then when it's really soft, you could stick it in the fridge if you like it cold or to preserve it. So when you want to eat it, you can just break it in half, or you could cut it. So right here you could see the core. The core is attached to this stem. So the core is actually pretty soft. It's not like the sugar apple that the core is harder. So you can see, you could just pull this off. And I dropped it. So here's the core. And it actually breaks in half easily. So most times what I've seen is that the soursop, when it falls because this edge right here is weak. This right here gets weak, and then this part, the little stick part, just stays on the plant, and the core stays in the fruit. So what breaks is the connection from the stick to the core, and then the skin right here breaks. Whereas the sugar apple, the core is much harder, so it stays with the stick, and then the whole fruit falls, and then you're left with like a gaping hole in the fruit, which is where the core used to be. So yeah, you could break it in half, or you could cut it, and you could see how it's like divided up into segments. You see all these different segments. The Nona species are like this. They all have a bunch of segments. And with the sugar apple, there's a lot more seeds. In each segment, there's pretty much a seed. But with the soursop, there's only seeds in a couple of the segments. You could also peel the fruit like this, and it's pretty like fibrous looking after you peel it. So these seeds, you can see them in here, they're not edible and they're pretty hard. So you don't want to eat them, and then if you're like sucking on the flesh, you also want to be careful not to swallow the seed. So I just like to pop them out like this, and then I eat this bit right here. Some people like to just bite the whole thing and eat everything, and then they spit out the seeds. But I've tried that, and then I end up biting on the seeds, and it hurts because they're pretty hard. So I'd rather just pop them out like that. So here the seeds are black and they have this little tip. So when you germinate them, the root will come out of that tip. So the soursop is really juicy. There's some fiber to it, especially in these like different segments. There's some fiber in it. But it's also sour. I mean, the name is soursop, and it's sweet too. It's not really sour. It has some sweetness to it. So here you see, you pull off a piece of the segment, and then you pop out the seed, and then you eat this part. So if you have a lot of soursops, or you don't really like the flavor of them, you can use it to make champola, which is this Cuban drink. So they basically take out all the pulp, they take out the seeds, and then they blend the pulp with like milk and sugar. And we've just done it with water, but you would do that, and then you'd make like a sour sweet drink. So if you want to freeze your soursops because you have too many and you want to use them to make like champola or like something else, I was thinking the soursop would be good to make a pie out of. Then you would have to take out all the seeds before you freeze it. So basically what I've been doing is that I use a fork to scoop out the flesh, and then I use 2 forks to break it apart and take out the seed. So after you scoop out your flesh, you can use 2 forks to separate the flesh and pull the seed out. So there's a seed right there, and then you go like this. And then you're left with it clean, and you could smush it down with the fork to feel for any seeds. You see there's one right here. So all of this you could freeze. We've already frozen 2.5 bags of these, and they're pretty solid. They're just like a block of ice. So we chose to put them in smaller bags because if you put them in a really big bag and you're just gonna use like half of it or a quarter of it, you're gonna have to defrost the whole thing in order to you just use a portion of it. So we put it in the smaller bag, so it would be like portion sizes. So if we were gonna make like one big champola, we would defrost this whole bag and then use it to make the smoothie, instead of having to defrost an entire giant bag and then refreeze what's left of it. So here's one that's pretty big. This is about as big as they have gotten for us. I weighed it and it says 5.8 pounds, but our scale is not the best, so I think maybe it's actually lighter. I'd say maybe like 4 pounds or like 3.5, but I'm not sure. So see, when it's ripe, all the little segments are very far spread out. This little one was on a branch that broke, so we took it off, and this isn't ready. But you could see the difference. It's a lighter green when it's ripe, and here's a darker green. And then the segments rub off really easily. They just break off, and it's very spread out, the segments. Here you can see the segments are closer together. Here you can see the core. And the seeds. So this tree is in Miami, Florida, and this is not the ideal climate for soursop, but we've been getting away with growing it. So the tree's about 5 years old, and it flowered like the last 2 years, and in total it gave us about 5 fruits. So the main issue, it seems, with the soursop is just a couple nights of cold temperature and it will be affected. So basically the tree will flower before the winter, maybe around November, December, I'm not exactly sure of the months, and it will flower, and then after it flowers the petals all fall off and you're left with these like little nubs. I'll zoom in on it, hopefully you could see it. those little nubs right there, those will become the fruit. It's right there, that little thing sticking out. So that will become the fruit. That's what it looks like after the petals fall. And so that stays on the tree. The tree will flower a lot before the winter, and then all the petals will fall. Those will be all over the tree. And then like 1 or 2 cold nights will come, and the whole thing will just drop the majority of its leaves, the whole tree. And it's left to basically some ugly looking leaves and some branches. So that's what happened this year. It flowered great, and we were really hoping for a nice crop, and then winter came, it dropped all its leaves, and I figured, well, all the blooms must have been damaged, there's not going to be any fruit. And then after the winter, maybe around like March, the leaves started growing back, and then out of nowhere it just started growing the fruit. So it seemed that the pollinated flower remained there over the winter for a couple months, like dormant or whatever, I'm not sure. And then when the temperature was right and it had the energy and it had its leaves, it started growing the fruit. So we were really excited, and it was covered in all these little tiny fruits everywhere, and they started growing, and now we have soursops in the summer. So maybe the season for the soursop would be actually earlier if there's not a cold that causes all the leaves to drop, because it seems that the blooms, the flowers, they can withstand more cold, but the leaves can't. So if the flowers can be protected from cold, then you could get a crop of soursop like later in the year. Whereas if it didn't drop its leaves, it might have had ripe fruit on it by April or March. But now it's June, and now it's when it has ripe fruit. An issue we've had with the tree is that since the fruit are so big, some of them can be like up to 4 pounds, they break the branches. So on the very top especially, there's a couple small weak branches, and some of them have snapped with a couple fruit on it, which was pretty sad. Here on the tip top, I don't know if you could see, but right there, there's a broken branch. And I think that one had like 3 soursops on them. So we had one soursop fall that was green, and then another one that fell and just got all smushed. But if the soursop falls, well, it's not really soft, then it might be okay. We also have a lot of leaves on the bottom, so I guess that helps like cushion the fall. If it fell onto like pavement or something, it would just explode for sure if it was really ripe. Before it wasn't really, I don't think there's many people growing soursop in Miami, because it does really need warm temperatures. But it seems that the summers have been getting hotter, and so have the winters, and that it's been okay, and then you could grow it. I would say that since it's really dependent on how cold the winter is, that this wouldn't be the best plant to plant a lot of, like get a whole orchard of, unless you're willing to take a loss. But I think for like a home gardener, it'd be really good, because if you do get a mild winter, then you'll get fruit, and if you don't, then I mean, you can't really do anything. But it's better than purchasing soursops at the store, I would think, if you really wanted them, because we got really lucky. I'd say there's 20 to 30, 40 fruit on this.